In the silver darkness between stars, where light itself seemed to hold its breath, the Caltharian science vessel Gentle Tide moved through space like a whisper through silk. Captain Phoenix Orith stood before the observation windows, her 4 amber eyes reflecting the distant glow of a dying red giant. The Caltharians were a species born of tranquil forests and endless patience, beings who measured time in seasons rather than seconds. For 200 years, they had explored the quiet corners of the galaxy, cataloging stellar phenomena with the gentle dedication of artists completing a masterpiece they knew would never truly be finished. Phoenix had commanded this vessel for 18 cycles, and in all that time, she had found peace in the rhythm of discovery. Each nebula mapped, each cosmic anomaly documented, brought her a sense of profound satisfaction. Her crew of 40 researchers shared this temperament. They worked in harmony, their days filled with quiet conversation and the soft hum of instruments measuring the universe's most subtle secrets. But today, something had changed. Her navigation officer, Dorian Vex, approached with unusual speed. His movements, typically flowing and deliberate, now carried an edge of urgency that made Phoenix's secondary hearts quicken. His silver skin had paled to an almost white shade. "Captain, our deep space sensors have detected something," Dorian said, his voice low. A massive structure, 15 kilometers in length, drifting in Sector 9 of the Haunted Reaches. The Haunted Reaches. Even the name carried weight. This was quarantine space, a region where the Galactic Assembly had forbidden all travel 300 generations ago. Phoenix felt her breath catch. 15 kilometers. Nothing natural grew that large. Nothing peaceful required that much mass. "Show me," she commanded. The holographic display materialized between them, and Phoenix felt her world tilt. The vessel that appeared in shimmering blue light was unlike anything she had ever witnessed. Where Caltharian ships curved like leaves, where Vexian cruisers flowed like water, this thing was all angles and aggression. Armor plating thick enough to withstand stellar radiation covered every surface. Weapon ports dotted the hull like the eyes of some ancient predator. Redundant shield generators created overlapping fields of protection that suggested their builders expected to face threats that would destroy lesser vessels instantly. The ship looked wounded, scarred by battles that must have been apocalyptic in scale. Yet it had survived. Every dent had been repaired, every breach sealed, every system rebuilt stronger than before. This was not a vessel designed for exploration or trade. This was a warship built by beings who understood that the universe was not kind, that survival required strength, and that sometimes the only way forward was through violence. "Computer, identify," Phoenix ordered, though dread already pooled in her stomach. The ship's artificial intelligence processed for several moments before responding in its calm, measured tone. Vessel matches restricted database entry. Classification, quarantine origin. Species designation, human. Planet of origin, Earth. Status, forbidden contact by order of the Galactic Assembly, year 2847 Standard Galactic Calendar. The bridge fell into absolute silence. Every member of Phoenix's crew turned to stare at the hologram with expressions ranging from fascination to fear. Humans. The word itself carried power, spoken in hushed tones in academy halls and referenced in cautionary texts about the dangers of uncontrolled aggression. Phoenix had learned about humans during her officer training. Earth was classified as a Class 5 death world, a planet where evolution had become an arms race of ever-increasing lethality. The humans had emerged from conditions that would have exterminated gentler species 1,000 times over. They possessed an almost supernatural resilience, a refusal to accept defeat that bordered on madness. They felt pain yet continued fighting. They faced impossible odds yet searched for solutions. They loved fiercely, grieved deeply, and when threatened, became the most dangerous beings the galaxy had ever encountered. The Galactic Assembly had discovered Earth during humanity's industrial age, observing from a distance as these strange primates mastered fire, then metal, then the atom itself. First contact protocols were prepared. Ambassadors were selected. Then humanity demonstrated why death worlds produce survivors, not citizens. Within a single generation, humans had gone from primitive flight to splitting atoms. Another generation saw them reaching for the stars. But they carried their violence with them. Wars that would have destroyed peaceful species only made humans more determined. They created weapons capable of rendering their own world uninhabitable, stood on the brink of extinction, then somehow pulled back and continued climbing toward the cosmos. The Assembly voted to quarantine Earth. The decision was unanimous. Humanity was too volatile, too aggressive, too unpredictable to join galactic civilization. Let them mature for a few thousand years, the wisdom went. Perhaps time would gentle them. Perhaps isolation would teach them peace. But standing before this vessel, Phoenix realized the Assembly had made a critical error. They had underestimated human determination. This ship was ancient, its hull scored by centuries of cosmic radiation. The humans had launched it before the quarantine, before they knew the galaxy had rejected them. For 900 years, this vessel had drifted through the void, carrying its cargo deeper into unexplored space. Scan for life signs, Phoenix ordered, her voice steady despite the trembling in her limbs. Her medical officer, Thessa Wynne, worked her instruments with practiced efficiency. Minutes passed like hours. Finally, Thessa looked up, wonder and fear mixing in her expression. "Captain, I detect power signatures. Minimal, but present. Deep within the vessel's core, there are cryogenic chambers. The stasis fields are active. Captain, there are humans inside. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all sleeping. All waiting." Phoenix stared at the warship, understanding dawning like a cold sun. These humans had left Earth searching for a new home, not knowing their species had been deemed too dangerous for contact. They had traveled for 9 centuries, their ship keeping them preserved in frozen sleep while the galaxy moved on without them. They dreamed of first contact, of joining a community of worlds, of proving their worth among the stars. What would they think when they woke to discover the truth? "Captain, Galactic Assembly law is explicit," Dorian said quietly. "We must report this vessel and maintain distance. Contact with quarantined species carries severe penalties." Phoenix knew he was right. But she also knew something else. The Caltharians valued patience and understanding above all things. These humans had endured 900 years of darkness. They deserved to be seen, to be understood, not abandoned again. "Prepare a boarding team," she said softly. "We are scientists. We observe. We document. And if there are survivors on that vessel, beings who have survived almost a millennium in the void, then we owe them the dignity of witness." Her crew exchanged uncertain glances, but none objected. They trusted their captain, and Phoenix trusted that some laws were meant to be examined, not blindly followed. The gentle tide moved closer to the human warship, and with each passing kilometer, Phoenix felt history shifting around them. They were about to discover why this vessel was considered the most dangerous ship in the galaxy. Not because of its weapons or armor, but because of what the beings inside represented. Hope that refused to die. Determination that transcended time itself. The unbreakable will of a species that simply would not accept defeat. Human perseverance made manifest in steel. The airlock sealed behind them with a sound like thunder trapped in metal. Captain Phoenix led her team into the human vessel, each step echoing through corridors that had known only silence for centuries. Her team consisted of 5 others: Dorian Vex, her navigator whose silver skin now glowed faintly in the emergency lighting; Thessa Wynne, the medical officer whose healing touch had saved countless lives; Garrett Moss, a young engineer whose curiosity often outweighed his caution; and 2 security officers, Pendra and Volt, whose presence felt almost ceremonial given the stillness surrounding them. The moment they crossed into human territory, Phoenix felt the difference. The air itself carried weight, processed by ancient recyclers that somehow still functioned after 900 years of operation. The gravity was heavier than Caltharian standard, pulling at her limbs in a way that made every movement require conscious effort. How did humans live under such constant pressure? How did they move, fight, build under conditions that would exhaust other species within hours? The corridor stretched before them, wide enough to move equipment or evacuate personnel quickly. Emergency panels lined the walls at regular intervals, each marked with symbols in the human language. Garrett ran his scanner across the nearest panel and whistled softly, a sound that carried admiration despite his training. "Captain, these systems are incredible. Every section has independent life support, multiple redundancies, and backup power sources. This ship was designed to survive damage that would cripple any Caltharian vessel. They expected catastrophic failures as routine occurrences." Phoenix traced her fingers along the wall, feeling the texture of repairs layered upon repairs. Welding marks created patterns like scars on skin, each one telling a story of survival. The humans had built this ship expecting the universe to try killing them. They had prepared for every disaster, planned for every failure, and when those disasters came, they simply fixed what broke and kept moving forward. They moved deeper into the vessel, following Thessa's scanner toward the cryogenic chambers. The corridors branched in complex patterns, creating redundant paths to every critical system. Phoenix realized this design philosophy extended throughout the entire ship. If one route was blocked, 3 others remained. If one system failed, 2 more stood ready. The humans trusted nothing, expected everything to fail, and planned accordingly. They passed through what appeared to be living quarters. Unlike the sparse, efficient cabins on Caltharian vessels, these rooms showed signs of personalization. Faded images were still mounted on walls, showing human faces frozen in expressions of joy. Small objects sat on shelves, mementos of a world left behind. Phoenix paused at one image showing a human female holding a smaller human, both displaying the facial expression that meant happiness among their kind. "They brought their families," Thessa whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Captain, this was not just a military expedition. These were colonists. They brought children." The realization hit Phoenix like a physical blow. These humans had not launched a warship into the unknown. They had sent a community, complete with families, hopes, and dreams of building something new among the stars. The weapons and armor were not for conquest. They were for protection. The redundant systems were not military paranoia. They were parental instinct made manifest in steel and circuits. They reached the cryogenic bay 20 minutes later. The chamber was vast, stretching hundreds of meters in every direction. Thousands of pods lined the walls in ordered rows, each one containing a human in suspended animation. Soft blue lights indicated active stasis fields, keeping their occupants frozen in the moment before sleep became death. Garrett moved to the nearest control panel, his fingers dancing across the interface as he worked to understand the alien technology. "Captain, these systems are still drawing power from the ship's core reactor. Incredibly efficient design. The humans could remain in stasis for thousands of years if necessary. But there is something else." He pulled up a display that flickered to life, showing human script alongside numerical readouts. "The ship's navigation computer has been running calculations continuously for 9 centuries. It has been searching, Captain. Searching for a signal, any sign of civilization, any indication that someone out there might welcome them." Phoenix felt her heart break. For 900 years, this ship had drifted through the void, its artificial intelligence faithfully seeking contact that would never come. The Galactic Assembly had quarantined Earth, and these colonists had been caught in that decision, condemned to wander forever unless someone chose mercy over law. "Can we wake them?" Phoenix asked quietly. Thessa studied her medical scanner, comparing human biological data with the information stored in the ship's computer. "Yes, but Captain, we must consider what we are doing. If we wake them, we must tell them the truth. We must explain that their species was deemed too dangerous for contact, that they have been drifting in quarantine space for nearly a millennium, that the galaxy they hoped to join rejected them before they could even introduce themselves. The weight of that truth settled over the team like a shroud. These humans had sacrificed everything for a dream that had been denied before they even began their journey. How did you tell a mother that her child would never see the wonders of galactic civilization? How did you explain to a father that his courage meant nothing because bureaucrats had voted his entire species too violent to exist among peaceful worlds? We wake them anyway, Phoenix said firmly. Because the alternative is leaving them here, frozen and forgotten, their hopes preserved like insects in amber. That is cruelty beyond measure. At least if they wake, they can choose their own path forward. Dorian stepped forward, concern evident in his posture. Captain, if we do this, we violate every protocol the Assembly has established. We could face criminal charges, lose our commissions, spend the rest of our lives answering for this decision. Phoenix met his eyes steadily. Then we answer for it. But I will not abandon thinking, feeling beings to eternal sleep because lawmakers who never faced hardship decided an entire species was too dangerous to know. The Caltharians value understanding above all else. How can we claim to understand anything if we refuse to meet those different from us? She turned to Garrett. Wake them. Start with a small group. We will explain the situation and let them decide what comes next. Garrett worked for several minutes, his hands moving with increasing confidence as he deciphered the human systems. Finally, he found the command sequence. Initiating revival protocol for Pod Cluster 7. 10 individuals, mixed ages and specializations according to the manifest. Revival time, approximately 20 minutes. The pods began to hum, their stasis fields fluctuating as warming cycles activated. Phoenix watched through the transparent covers as color slowly returned to gray skin, as chests began rising and falling with restored breath, as 9 centuries of sleep released its hold on 10 human lives. The first to wake was a male, tall even by human standards, with skin the color of deep earth and eyes that snapped open with immediate alertness. He sat up quickly, too quickly for someone who had been frozen for so long, and his gaze swept the chamber before settling on Phoenix and her team. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other across the vast gulf of evolution and culture. Then the human smiled, an expression that showed teeth in a way that might have seemed threatening if not for the genuine warmth in his eyes. "Hello," he said in a language the translation matrix converted instantly. "My name is Dante Okoye. I am the colony expedition leader. I assume since you are standing in our ship and we are still alive, this is first contact." Phoenix felt herself returning the smile despite her anxiety. There was something disarming about this human's direct approach, his immediate acceptance of the impossible situation. "Yes, I am Captain Phoenix Orith of the Caltharian research vessel Gentle Tide. And I am afraid I have difficult news about your journey." More humans were waking now, 9 others rising from their pods with varying degrees of grace. An older female with hair gone white and hands marked by old scars. A young male barely into adulthood who looked around with wonder despite his confusion. Others, each unique, each carrying their own story written in the lines of their faces and the set of their shoulders. Dante helped his companions from their pods, speaking quietly in their language, calming fears and organizing them with practiced efficiency. Within minutes, all 10 stood before Phoenix's team, waiting with remarkable patience for answers to questions they had not yet asked. Phoenix took a deep breath and began explaining. She told them about the Galactic Assembly, about the Quarantine Order, about Earth's classification as a death world too dangerous for contact. She explained that 900 years had passed while they slept, that their ship had drifted far beyond explored space, that they had become a ghost story whispered in academy halls. She watched their faces as understanding dawned. Saw hope transform into shock, shock into grief, grief into something harder to define. But she did not see despair. Even receiving news that would have broken most species, these humans simply absorbed it, processed it, and began adapting. When Phoenix finished, silence filled the chamber. Then Dante spoke, his voice steady. So we are alone. Not just lost, but deliberately isolated. The galaxy knew we existed and chose to turn away. Yes, Phoenix said simply, because there was no point in softening the truth. Dante nodded slowly, then looked at his companions. Something passed between them, some unspoken communication that transcended words. Finally, he turned back to Phoenix. Thank you for waking us. Thank you for choosing compassion over law. But now I must ask you something important, Captain. You have seen our ship. You have seen how we build, how we prepare, how we refuse to accept defeat even when the universe itself tells us to stop. Does that frighten you? Phoenix considered the question carefully. Did it frighten her? This species that survived on a world that would have killed her ancestors 1,000 times over? These beings who built warships disguised as colony vessels and called it prudence? These humans who woke from 9 centuries of sleep and immediately began adapting to circumstances that would have destroyed lesser wills? Yes, she admitted. But I am also in awe. Your resilience is terrifying and beautiful in equal measure. Dante's smile returned, sadder now but no less genuine. That is fair. We frighten ourselves sometimes. But Captain, being dangerous is not the same as being evil. A storm is dangerous, but it brings rain. A fire is dangerous, but it provides warmth. We are what our world made us, but we are also more than survival instincts and violence. We are hope, determination, and the absolute refusal to accept that anything is impossible. He gestured to the pods surrounding them, to the thousands still sleeping. These people trusted me to lead them to a new world. I failed them. But I will not fail them twice. If the galaxy will not welcome us, then we continue forward. We find an empty system, we build our colony, and we prove through actions that humans deserve a place among the stars, even if we must earn it alone. Phoenix felt tears forming in her eyes, a Caltharian response to profound emotional resonance. This human had just learned his 900-year journey had been for nothing, that his species was considered monsters by civilizations he had dreamed of meeting, and his response was not rage or despair but determination to keep moving forward. What if you did not have to be alone, she heard herself saying. What if there were those willing to stand with you, to help you find your place, regardless of what the assembly decreed? 3 days later, the gentle tide and the human colony ship, which Dante had named Perseverance, drifted side by side in the darkness between stars. All 10,000 human colonists now walked their vessel's corridors, brought back from frozen sleep by Caltharian technology and human determination working in harmony. The two crews had begun exchanging knowledge, sharing meals, and discovering that despite evolutionary gulfs, certain truths remained universal. Phoenix stood in the Perseverance's observation deck alongside Dante and several other human leaders. Through the massive windows, stars burned with cold fire, indifferent to the drama unfolding in their midst. Behind them, Phoenix's entire crew had gathered, along with 50 humans representing various colony departments. What happened next would determine the fate of thousands. The Galactic Assembly will not ignore this, Dorian said quietly, stating the obvious truth everyone already knew. When we report this encounter, they will send warships. They will force the humans back into quarantine or worse, they may decide that extinction is preferable to the risk you represent. A human female named Tabitha Moss, the colony's chief engineer and Dante's second-in-command, laughed bitterly. So we survived 900 years just to be murdered by bureaucrats afraid of what we might become. That seems absurdly unfair, even by human standards. It is worse than unfair, Thessa said, her voice carrying the weight of moral certainty. It is evil. These people have done nothing wrong. They committed no crime except being born on a harsh world. They dreamed of joining galactic civilization, and for that dream, they face punishment. Where is the justice in that? Phoenix had spent the last 3 days wrestling with this exact question. Caltharian philosophy taught patience, understanding, and respect for established order. But it also taught something more fundamental, that all beings deserved dignity, that life itself was precious, and that sometimes laws failed to reflect deeper truths. She had walked among the humans, shared meals with them, listened to their stories. She had met children who had been frozen before they could walk, now waking to a universe that feared them. She had spoken with elderly colonists who had sacrificed their final years for a future they would never see, trusting that their descendants would build something beautiful. She had learned that humans loved deeply, grieved honestly, and faced impossible situations with a humor that bordered on madness. They were dangerous, yes. But they were also magnificent. "I have a proposal," Fennec said, her voice cutting through the worried conversations filling the observation deck. "One that will require courage from both our peoples." Everyone turned to face her. Fennec felt the weight of their attention, the hopes and fears of thousands resting on whatever words came next. She thought of her own people, the Caltharians who had spent centuries exploring in peace. She thought of the humans, who had endured hell itself to reach for the stars. And she thought of a galaxy that had grown comfortable, safe, and perhaps too certain of its own wisdom. The Galactic Assembly quarantined Earth because they feared human violence, she began. They saw a species that solved problems through conflict, that built weapons before building peace, that conquered their own world before reaching for others. They were not entirely wrong. Humans are dangerous. But the Assembly made a critical error. They confused danger with evil, strength with malice, determination with cruelty. She gestured to the humans gathered around her. "I have spent 3 days with these people. They are not monsters. They are survivors. Their world taught them that nothing comes easily, that every achievement requires sacrifice, that the universe does not care about fairness. So they adapted. They became strong because weakness meant death. They became innovative because stagnation meant extinction. They became determined because giving up meant the end of everything they loved." Dante stepped forward, standing beside Fennec in a gesture of solidarity. "Captain Orith is being diplomatic. The truth is simpler and harsher. We are what we needed to be to survive. Yes, we fight. Yes, we build weapons. Yes, we prepare for worst-case scenarios that other species cannot even imagine. But we also love, create, dream, and hope. We are contradictions wrapped in flesh, capable of terrible violence and extraordinary compassion, often in the same breath." He looked around at his fellow humans, his expression carrying pride and sorrow in equal measure. "We left Earth knowing it was a one-way journey. We would never see our home again, never walk in forests that remembered our ancestors, never swim in oceans that had birthed our species. We sacrificed everything for the chance to meet other civilizations, to learn from them, to contribute our perspective to a greater community. And we find that community wants nothing to do with us." A young human male stepped forward, barely 20 standard years old, with eyes that held too much understanding for someone so young. "My name is Jonas Keene. I was 7 when we entered cryosleep. I am 20 now, but the universe is 900 years older. Everyone I knew on Earth is dead. Every friend, every distant relative, every person who smiled at me on the street is dust. The only family I have left are the people on this ship. And you are telling me that we are monsters because we refuse to die quietly?" His words struck like physical blows. Fennec saw her crew reacting, saw compassion warring with ingrained caution, saw the moment when hearts overcame fear. These were not theoretical aliens in a cautionary database entry. These were living, breathing beings who had lost everything except each other and still chose hope over despair. "My proposal is this," Fennec continued, her voice stronger now. "We do not report this encounter to the Assembly. We help the humans establish their colony in unclaimed space, far from established territories. We provide them with updated star charts, technological assistance, and most importantly, friendship. We become the first bridge between humanity and the galaxy, proving through our actions that peaceful coexistence is possible." Dorian's eyes widened. "Captain, that is treason. We would be violating the most serious quarantine order in galactic history. They would strip us of our commissions, imprison us, possibly execute us as examples. I know, Phoenix said calmly. That is why I am not ordering anyone to participate. This must be a choice, made freely by each individual. Those who wish to return to Caltharian space may take our shuttle. I will provide testimony absolving them of any wrongdoing. But those who choose to stay, who choose to help these humans build their colony, will be making a statement that transcends politics. We will be declaring that compassion matters more than law, that understanding is worth personal sacrifice, and that sometimes the most dangerous thing we can do is choose love over fear. Silence fell over the observation deck. Phoenix watched her crew, seeing them wrestling with the most important decision of their lives. Leave and maintain their comfortable existence, or stay and become criminals in service of a higher principle. Neither choice was wrong, and both required courage. Thessa was the first to speak. I am staying. I have spent 3 days examining human biology, and I am fascinated by their regenerative capabilities, their immune system's adaptability, their sheer physical resilience. But more than that, I have treated human children who smile despite knowing they are alone in the universe. I cannot abandon them. Garrett stepped forward next. I am staying. Human engineering is incredible. Their redundancy philosophies, their damage control systems, their refusal to accept single points of failure, these concepts could revolutionize Caltharian ship design. I want to learn from them, and I want to help them build something amazing. One by one, every member of Phoenix's crew chose to stay. Not because they were ordered, but because they had seen past fear to the truth beneath. Humans were dangerous, but danger was not inherently evil. A scalpel was dangerous in the hands of a surgeon, yet it saved lives. Humans were the galaxy's scalpel, sharp and frightening, but capable of extraordinary precision when guided by principles rather than panic. Dante approached Phoenix, his hand extended in the human gesture of agreement and respect. She took it, feeling the warmth of his skin, the strength in his grip, the subtle tremor that betrayed emotion held carefully in check. You are sacrificing your entire life for us, he said quietly. Your career, your home, your place in Caltharian society. Why? Phoenix smiled, feeling peace settle over her like a warm blanket. Because I am a scientist, and scientists seek truth. The truth is that the galaxy is wrong about your species. You are not monsters to be feared. You are exactly what the galaxy needs, even if it does not yet realize it. You represent resilience, determination, and the absolute refusal to accept that anything is impossible. Those qualities are not weaknesses. They are strengths that every civilization should aspire to. She looked around at the gathered crowd, at Caltharians and humans standing together, fear giving way to possibility. My people evolved on a kind world. We never faced true hardship, never knew what it meant to fight for survival. We became wise but also comfortable, patient but also passive. We observe the universe but rarely challenge it. You humans are our opposite. You challenge everything, question every assumption, push every boundary. Together, we can become something neither species could achieve alone. Tabitha Moss raised her hand, drawing everyone's attention. I have been running calculations based on the star charts Captain Orith provided. There is an unclaimed system approximately 8 months away at our current speed. 3 terrestrial planets, 1 in the habitable zone, abundant resources, and far enough from established territories that we will have time to build before anyone notices us. I propose we name it Haven, because that is what we will make it. A haven for humans and anyone else brave enough to stand with us. The humans erupted in cheers, their voices filling the observation deck with sound that was joyful and defiant in equal measure. The Caltharians joined in, their quieter celebrations no less heartfelt. 2 species, divided by evolution but united by choice, embarking on a journey that would reshape galactic history. Over the following months, as both ships traveled toward Haven, Phoenix watched miracles unfold daily. Caltharian patience combined with human innovation created technologies neither species could have developed alone. Human children learned Caltharian meditation techniques, finding peace they had never known. Caltharian adults discovered human music, art, and literature, experiencing emotions they had believed themselves incapable of feeling. They reached Haven on a morning that felt like destiny made manifest. The planet hung before them, blue and green and achingly beautiful, a world that had waited 4 billion years for someone to give it purpose. The colony ships entered orbit, and Phoenix stood beside Dante as they looked down at their new home. "We will face challenges," Dante said quietly. "The environment will test us. Resources will be scarce initially. And eventually, the Galactic Assembly will discover what we have built here. They will come, and they will demand answers. Then we will give them answers," Phoenix replied. "We will show them a thriving colony where humans and Caltharians live in harmony. We will demonstrate that danger and peace can coexist, that strength can be gentle, that the most frightening thing in the universe is also capable of the greatest compassion. And if they still refuse to see reason, then we will defend what we have built. Together." Dante smiled, that peculiar human expression that showed teeth and warmth simultaneously. "You know what the most dangerous thing in the galaxy is, Captain? It is not weapons or warships or even humans themselves. The most dangerous thing is hope that refuses to die, compassion that defies logic, and the simple, terrifying idea that maybe, just maybe, we can be better than our fears." As the first shuttles descended toward Haven's surface, carrying humans and Caltharians who had chosen each other over everything their societies had taught them, Phoenix understood the truth. The Assembly had been right to fear humans. Not because they were violent, but because they represented an idea that threatened the comfortable order of galactic civilization. They represented change. Growth. The possibility that species could evolve not just biologically, but philosophically. They proved that the harshest environments could produce the gentlest souls, that suffering could create empathy rather than cruelty, and that sometimes the most dangerous choice was refusing to accept that anything was impossible. The colony grew quickly. Within a year, Haven transformed from empty world to thriving settlement. Human determination and Caltharian wisdom combined to create something unprecedented. They built cities that harmonized with the environment rather than dominating it. They established governments that valued both individual achievement and collective well-being. They created art that expressed truths neither species could have articulated alone. And they waited, because they knew the galaxy would eventually notice what they had built. 3 years after landing, the Galactic Assembly ships arrived. 50 vessels, bristling with weapons, demanding explanation for the treasonous act of aiding quarantined species. Phoenix stood on the bridge of the Perseverance, which now served as Haven's orbital defense platform, and opened a channel to the Assembly fleet. "This is Captain Phoenix Orith, formerly of the Caltharian research vessel Gentle Tide. I am responsible for the colony you see below. I chose compassion over law, understanding over fear, and hope over established order. If you wish to punish me, I will accept that consequence. But before you act, I invite you to see what we have built. Send representatives. Walk our streets. Meet humans not as database entries but as living beings. Then decide whether we committed a crime or corrected a historical mistake." For 3 days, Assembly representatives explored Haven. They met human children playing with Caltharian age mates, learning cooperation through games. They attended councils where both species debated policy with respect and patience. They witnessed technologies that neither group could have developed alone, innovations born from combining 2 wildly different perspectives. They saw humans treating Caltharians with gentle reverence, and Caltharians defending humans with fierce determination. On the 4th day, the Assembly fleet withdrew. No arrests were made. No punishments declared. The quarantine on Earth remained technically in force, but a new provision was quietly added to galactic law. Colonies established in unclaimed space were subject to local governance, not Assembly oversight. It was not official recognition. It was something more valuable, tacit permission to continue the experiment. Haven grew into a thriving world, and news of its success spread through underground networks. Other species, curious about these dangerous humans, began arriving as individuals rather than official delegations. They came seeking trade, knowledge, or simply the chance to meet beings whose reputation exceeded all rational bounds. They found humans welcoming, fierce, and impossible to categorize. They discovered that danger and kindness were not opposites but partners in the grand dance of survival. And slowly, impossibly, the galaxy began changing its mind. 20 years after landing, Phoenix stood in Haven's capital city, now called Harmony, watching human and Caltharian children racing through streets lined with architecture that borrowed from both traditions. She was old now, her movements slower, her amber eyes less sharp. But her spirit burned as brightly as ever. Dante approached, his own hair gone gray, his face lined with years of labor and laughter. Together, they had become symbols of what was possible when fear gave way to understanding. "We did it," he said simply. "We proved them wrong." Phoenix shook her head gently. "No, my friend. We proved them incomplete. The assembly was not wrong about human danger. They simply failed to understand that being dangerous is not the same as being wrong. You are dangerous. You challenge, push, question, and refuse to accept limitations. But that danger is exactly what the galaxy needed. Comfort breeds stagnation. Peace without growth becomes sleep. You woke us up." She looked around at the city they had built, at the proof that different species could not just coexist but thrive together. "This is why your ship was the most dangerous in the galaxy. Not because of its weapons or armor, but because it carried an idea that could reshape everything. It carried hope that refused to accept defeat, determination that transcended time, and the simple, revolutionary belief that maybe the universe could be better than it was." Dante smiled, reaching out to take her hand. "And you chose to believe us. That took courage we could never have mustered alone." As the sun set over Harmony, painting the sky in colors no human had seen for 900 years, Phoenix understood the final truth. Humans had been quarantined because they were dangerous. They remained dangerous even now, perhaps more so than ever. But they had also become something else, proof that danger could build rather than destroy, that strength could nurture rather than conquer, and that sometimes the most frightening thing in the universe was also its greatest hope. The most dangerous ship in the galaxy had delivered the most dangerous cargo imaginable, the possibility of change. And the galaxy, slowly but inevitably, was learning to embrace it.